In this video, I want to put the strategic narrative method in context. And to do so, I'd like to talk to you about narrative power. What is narrative power? Why does it matter to your business? And how do you increase it successfully? Have you ever wondered why some companies seem to attract people successfully more than others? They're more vibrant, they're just more appealing. They are almost irresistible. And why others struggle to differentiate and to control the interactions that they have with their market, with their customers, or with their organizations. It is a crucial goal of many CEOs in professional services firms. Some companies have more narrative powers than others. And whether it is by design or by chance, it is the responsibility of the leadership of a firm to increase it. So let's take a look at what is narrative power, first of all. In society, narrative power is our ability to dictate norms and values. Have you noticed how all our interactions, wherever you do, whenever you go to school, whenever you go to work, whenever you are interacting with friends, with potential clients, it seems all of these interactions seems to be ruled by some norms that are typically invisible and that will play either in your favor or against you. Whoever has more narrative power will almost win. It's almost like you are playing tennis in an uneven field like this one. It's even like you would be the person at the bottom of the court. Everybody wants to be the person at the top of the court because obviously it's easier to win the game. Well, that's what happens when you have more narrative power. Same here for rugby. These images are really fun because they really describe what narrative power is visually, whereas narrative power is typically something that is very intangible. It's invisible. As soon as you enter a room, or the metaphor here, the playing field, the court, as soon as you enter a space, a given space in your market, you can tell if you're going to face headwinds or if it's going to be easier to grow a company successfully. Whether you want it, you are ruled by many narratives. The planet has a narrative, the society has a narrative, your country, region, city, your industry has a narrative. And obviously your company has a narrative. And you personally also have a narrative. Whether you want it or not, you live, you make decisions, you take actions guided by a narrative. So in the context of business, narrative power is the ability to dictate organizational and market norms and values. Say you have an idea for a disruptive company, something that will change the rules of the market because it has a different business model or a new technology. You grow narrative power because you increase the ability of your firm, of your company, to dictate the way the market rules. You are a disruptor. People will pay for a story, but people will die for a narrative. This is in one sentence why narrative power matters. We've all heard that storytelling is so important in business. You probably have read books. I have read many of them. And storytelling is very, very crucial for sure. But narratives are even more important than just stories. In society, narratives make people do incredible things. Take, for example, the example of the freedom narrative. Liberty Leading the People by Eugène Delacroix. This is a painting that you can see in the Louvre Museum in Paris. And for sure, to defend freedom, to build freedom, many people died because they believed that there was an opportunity to live free and to become the person you want, to have equal access to the same rights as everyone. The narrative of fortune is a powerful force that gathered 100,000 people to go look for gold during the Alaska Klondike gold rush of 1896. This is a photo taken in Seattle. This is a narrative that attracted so many people in hope to become rich and wealthy. Here is an example about the narrative of efficiency. The Amish can raise a barn in Ohio in just a matter of a day or sometimes half a day because they operate under a singular narrative. And this example here gives me the opportunity to introduce a concept that most people overlooked, which is a narrative is a way to organize how we operate as a group, how we operate in society, how we operate in a business. A narrative is a way to decide which action to take in a given context and a given moment. Apple is certainly a brand that understood this power early on, playing with the FOMO narrative. And as you can see on this photo here, people would camp, do crazy stuff, almost die in the hope to be the first to get one of the newest Apple products. Narratives are also very powerful to build political movements, such as MAGA, Make America Great Again. Narrative, again, make people do incredible things. Now, let's go back to business. So in the business context, why does this matter to you? Well, if you are a transformative company, if you are a provider of a service that intends to transform something, either transforming your industry, transforming the state of your clients, or the state of your environment, your context, this is something you really need to pay attention to. You will mobilize people, you will align them, you will help them through transformative and adaptive challenges more easily. If people can see the same picture, if people can rally around a system of stories and behaviors, actions and norms, and work more efficiently together, they are more likely to succeed. In fact, narratives are probably what made the sapiens species, our species, survive, whereas other species disappeared because they didn't have the capacity to imagine intangible and imaginary things like myth. Now, narrative power really matters depending on in different situations, whereas depending on where you are in your journey, especially if you're an established company and you need to reorganize, you need to launch new products and new service, merge, expand, innovate, narrative power will be here to help you align people. If you're starting a company, if you are if you're raising funds, if you want to hire faster, if you want to define your market positioning, if you want to differentiate, this is where narrative is also critical. And finally, it's not a question of, the point here is that narrative power is not a question of type of organization. It's not a question of size of company. It's more a question of phase and where you are in your journey. And no matter the phase, no matter the size of the company, you have a narrative, so you have the ability to build narrative power and succeed. How do we build narrative power? The first and most essential concept you need to learn is that there is a difference between a story and a narrative. Most people don't realize this. Most people use those two terms interchangeably. You probably have heard before that you need to have your story straight. You need to tell your story. You need to have a story to share with people. A story is, in essence, something that happens to someone or something. It's a finite entity. A story has a beginning, a middle, and end. It's a unit. It's a closed-ended piece of sense-making and meaning-making information that helps you understand what happened to yourself or what happened to somebody in your community. A narrative, on the other hand, is a system of those stories, but it goes beyond just storytelling. It adds layers such as actions and norms. You don't build a narrative just by saying things. You build narrative by also walking the talk and behaving differently. You build a narrative by also institutionalizing new norms, new habits, and new values. Ultimately, a narrative is there to frame reality. A narrative is by design biased, is by design a perception. It's not necessarily true. We can go back to the narratives that I shared as examples before. If you think about political parties or communities or movements, they tend to lean towards one version of reality. And that's what a narrative is. Narratives, so let's go through through the definition of a narrative step by step, and to explore what we mean by a system and a system of stories, actions, and norms that frame reality. First of all, let's look at a system. A system because as this picture shows, the narrative of Apple spans many years, many products. In fact, the narrative of Steve Jobs is probably worth now trillions of dollars. Think about the valuation of Apple. The whole narrative that Steve Jobs, took decades to build has now grown into a company that is one of the most valuable company in the world. Religion understood the power of narratives very early on from the beginning. Here is an example of what I mean by a system of stories. Narratives are like constellations. Can you see the constellation in this picture? There it is. Narrative is happening in the white space between stories and data points. This is the Big Dipper. And as you can see on this picture, if I didn't draw the line, you probably would have a hard time, or it would actually have taken you a little bit of time to locate where the constellation is. Let's go to the third piece of the definition. A narrative, let me bring back to you on screen. Let me bring it back for you on screen. A narrative is a system of stories, actions, and norms that frame reality. So what do we mean by stories, actions, and norms? Most people think that a narrative is a piece of communication, is what we say. And therefore, many CEOs, many business leaders are scared about the idea of building a narrative because they believe that they have to be good writers, good speakers, good communicators. It's partly true, but not only. A narrative, building a narrative and building narrative power is a triangle. It takes three skills. It takes what we say, how we think, and what we do. It's this triangulation of words, mindsets, and action that really builds narrative power. If you go see a client and come up with the best story to tell, the best documents, the best presentation, it's only one piece of the equation. It's only one piece of your action as a business leader. But everything hinges on your mindset, because your mindset determines how you're going to be able to frame and lead the conversation with this client. The third piece here is, what are you going to do? Are you going to be willing to even talk to this client? When are you going to schedule the call? What are you going to do during the call? Do you have a sales process? Do you have questions to ask? This is how you build the narrative of an expert that sells expertise, for instance. I just gave you one example about how to sell in professional services, but think about all of the other activities that you have to run on a daily basis. How you market, how you organize your team, how you keep yourself in check, how you operate as a leader, how you plan your business, how you communicate with the outside, how you go look for investors. All of these actions are controlled and influenced by norms, by actions that take those three things: what you say, how you think, and what you do. As I said before, most people think that what we say is the narrative. And it's no surprise that you will hear, oh, how should I write my narrative? How should I craft my narrative? I want to tell a better story. I want to tell a better narrative. But this is a very limited view. When you only think like that, you only focus on the visible piece of the iceberg. You ignore the most important parts, which are, again, your mindset and your actions. The third piece and the third layer of definition here of narrative is that a narrative frame a reality. As I mentioned before, a narrative is a viewpoint. It's biased. It's a point of view. It's a perspective. It's an opinion, right? So have you ever wondered why we believe that sharks are dangerous? Well, think about what is it that we say about sharks? What is it that we do about sharks? And what's our mindset about sharks? Sharks, usually in our culture, are scary. When you go to the beach, if there are sharks in the water, you will see a sign, don't go swim, swim at your own risk. And we've written kids' book, and kids are afraid of sharks because they read those stories. So I mapped out here the 4 typical tools, the 4 actions, the 4 stories, the 4 norms that build narrative power against a shark. So if I could put the shark here on the tennis court, I would put them at the bottom of the tennis court. In fact, sharks are not necessarily dangerous. Most sharks are not all dangerous. Don't try this at home. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't dive next to a white shark anyways, because I'm too conditioned with that narrative. But it turns out that sharks are by far not the most dangerous animal on the planet. Do you know which one it is? It's actually dogs. Dogs are the most dangerous, the most lethal animal on the planet. What about recycling? We believe that recycling is good, right? It's common knowledge, it's common custom. This narrative has really been ingrained in our culture, in our society, in our modern countries. It has been institutionalized because we know that when the can, the trash bin is blue with this logo on it, it means you can recycle. We've heard the campaign, we've learned in school, and we've probably carried artifacts that tell us that recycling is a good thing. It actually makes us feeling good, because when you recycle something, what do you toss? What do you dispose of? You dispose of your guilt. You're no longer guilty because you believe that whatever you put in the blue bin is going to be recycled. It's going to be reusable. So you're going to limit the footprint on the environment of your actions. Well, it turns out that only 7% of packaging is actually recycled. We only recycle 7% of packaging on the planet. As you can see here, narratives can influence, can dictate and control our norms and values to a point that we do crazy stuff. It doesn't make any sense anymore, but we keep consuming packaging that doesn't get recycled, that just lands in the landfill as any other trash. I would highlight here that narratives, although they are typically built for good intent, can also be toxic, because narrative power is about framing reality. It's one way to look at things. So you can decide to frame things for your benefit in an ethical way or unethical way. Strategic narrative is the name of the MetaHelm method that I created. This method is a proprietary method that is intended to align and mobilize people through a system of stories, practices, and norms. Strategic narrative is a method to help you build narrative power for your business. I do it for professional services firms, for CEOs, founders, business leaders, business owners, solopreneurs of professional services firms who want to operate with a higher degree of confidence, higher degree of success, because they can control better the interactions that they have with their market, with their clients, with their team, and with themselves. Why with themselves? Because You can't remove yourself out of the equation. If you want to build a successful business, and if you're the leader of the business, whatever you say, whatever you do, however you think, has a direct influence on the success of your business. And that is a radical departure from typical and traditional old school storytelling, what I call broken storytelling, storytelling 1.0, that ignores that part, that sets aside the leader of the organization or the leader of a business. In this method, you can align yourself, your team, people all around, inside and outside your company, with a common goal. Many organizations' narrative look like the one on the left. If you've read my book, Strategic Narrative, you have probably noticed a similar graphic where I illustrate and I just take 10 examples of pieces of communications and processes and things we do in an organization that look cluttered. That's what the company with a weak narrative power looks like from the outside. You see a bunch of stories and behaviors and processes and things that don't look very coherent. It can be clear, things can be very, very clear, but things may not be orchestrated with coherence. Building narrative power takes you to organize those stories and actions and norms into a coherent system that I built over the years after researching many organizations. To do that, I have a tool for you called the Strategic Narrative Canvas. The Strategic Narrative Canvas is built around 2 dimensions. The first one is internal versus external, collective versus individual. Again, I believe that a narrative is not just marketing stuff. It's not just communication or PR. It's not just what you say to the outside. It's what happens everywhere, inside and outside. And narrative power starts increasing the minute you align those two, the external facet and the internal facet. So that's why in this model, there is an internal versus external facet. Now you see the other dimension, the collective versus individual dimension here. Well, as I said, strategic narrative is a method that helps you align and mobilize people to tackle tough challenges sometimes. That's why you have to consider both aspects of it. It has to be all in congruence. These are the foundational structural element of the strategic narrative canvas. So the strategic narrative canvas really helps you visualize narratives. It helps you map them out. It helps you get out of your mind what you have and map out what is going on that either makes your narrative power strong or weak. We use it at MetaHelm to develop new strategic narrative or document existing ones. And I have done it with several case studies that you can find on other videos I've shot, other videos I created, where I take very large examples of very famous companies such as Netflix or Mod Pizza or Volvo or Archimoto or Win Without Pitching, and I map their narrative on this canvas. So it's really a tool that helps you represent the system of stories, actions, practices, and norms that you should be able to mobilize people, including yourself, to take action inside and outside your organization. As you can see here, there are 4 areas, and I noticed that the biggest chunk of narrative power comes from 4 disciplines. The first one is called visionary leader. It's the internal and individual part of the canvas here. It's the first quadrant in the canvas. Visionary leadership is the discipline that people will really practice every day to form a vision for change. It's typically what change maker will do. They see something, they want to do something about it, and they take action. That's what it means to be a visionary leader. The second quadrant I want to talk about is meaningful marketing. Meaningful marketing is the discipline of creating marketing that is detached, that is geared toward a mission that is greater than the company, one of the key practices in meaningful marketing is to build a holistic business vision, not just a business vision geared and focused on yourself, but a business vision that is there to help people see an opportunity that they may not have seen and that's going to be greater than themselves. When I use the example of Volvo, what's so brilliant about their marketing over the decades is that they've built their company on the reputation of safety because they wanted to save lives. The president of Volvo lost a relative in a car crash and decided to reposition the organization and the company towards safety. And therefore, their marketing became really meaningful to everyone. People wanted to be safer when they drive cars. The third quadrant and the third discipline is purposeful teaming. This quadrant here helps you recognize the values, the ways of working, and the principles that get people to work and to want to work together. It's where the perspective of your firm starts, where it gets born. So to team purposefully, you have to ask yourself, what is the belief systems that we share together? What are the principles? What are the rules, the do's and don'ts that we commit to protecting in our work? And finally, the fourth discipline here is called authentic selling. How do we work with our customer? Authentic selling is the discipline of authentically, truthfully, and smoothly, I would say, genuinely align your offers and your products with what your customers genuinely want. There are two major relationships on this diagram that I didn't get a chance to represent, but the first one is the relationship between visionary leadership and meaningful marketing. This is what I call the transformational axis. It's the journey that you as a change maker, as the head, as the leader of a transformative organization took when you saw an opportunity that very few people saw, and the vision that you had towards creating a company that shoots for a higher level mission. That's the first axis here, is the transformative connection between those two disciplines. The second one is what I call the product development axis, the connections between your purpose as a team and how you deliver your services. So you may tell me, by the way, I don't have a team. I'm a solopreneur, but the way I understand team is through roles. And even if you're a solopreneur, you wear many hats throughout the day. You have many roles, in fact. You're the finance guy, you're the product development guy, you're the salesperson, you're the delivery person, you're the janitor, even if you clean up your office sometimes. So your perspective in the purposeful teaming discipline, your perspective gets crystal clear when you work on it, but it gets materialized when you build intentional products that are the material expression of that perspective. So this is the second axis here. Product development should be always done in alignment with the core belief systems that you've created with yourself or your team if you have one. So back to the strategic narrative canvas. The strategic narrative canvas is really a breakdown of those disciplines into 12 practices that help you plan, that help you map, that help you stay in check with the way you build narrative power for your organization. What is the first step that you should consider doing? The first step is to measure it. How much narrative power do you create today with your firm, with your company? And for this, I invite you to go to the MetaHelm website and take the 5-minute free assessment that I put together to measure quickly and intuitively how much narrative power you are really building. So go on the MetaHelm website, metahelm.com, and go to the menu that says assessment. And let's see how your company stacks up again, the 4 dimensions of the highly efficient, transformative professional services firms. Can't wait to see your results. And if you have any questions about this big topic of narrative power, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much.